There's a picture I think we've all seen, sometimes in movies, at times also in our families, and that's of a man who's standing perfectly still while chaos is swirling around him. And in the midst of it, he doesn't flinch. His face is unreadable. His hands are steady. And in our culture, we point to that man and say, "That's strength." And we admire the stoic, right? The one who keeps it together, the one who doesn't break, the one who stays calm under pressure. And there's truth in that admiration, I think. You see, emotional steadiness is powerful. It's the thing that lets firefighters walk into a burning building, or surgeons who make their precision cuts in the midst of an emergency, or even the parents, for example, who stay composed when their child needs reassurance instead of panic. But here's the problem, though. Somewhere along the way, Stoicism stopped being a tool and started being an identity. So instead of picking it up when the moment calls for composure, we wear it instead like armor that we never really take off. And it becomes the way that we always move through life. And that's when something shifts, when the very thing that protects us starts cutting us off from the very things that we need. Because when Stoicism turns into a shutdown, you're no longer choosing calm now. You're basically avoiding feeling. You're no longer steady, you're just numbing yourself. And the people who are around you, they stop knowing what's really going on the inside of you. They see the outer strength, but they don't see your inner truth. And I mean, I get why so many men end up here. You see, from an early age, we're trained to see emotional expression as a liability. Crying is weakness, fear is shameful, even joy, it's too loud, and it can seem unmanly, right? The message is clear. Keep it small, keep it contained, keep it to yourself. And so we build this silent code for living. Don't let anyone know what's happening inside. Solve your problems alone. Be the rock that everyone else can lean on, but never lean on yourself. And maybe we even tell ourselves that this is noble and that it's what a man should be. But here's what I wish more young men knew. The cost of constant stoicism is high. It might seem like you get respect, yes. It may even seem like you're keeping from looking weak, but it also keeps you from being fully human. You can't selectively shut down feelings, you see. If you lock sadness away, you also end up locking away joy. If you refuse to show fear, you end up also refusing to show love. And there's a quiet loneliness in being the strong one. People might trust your competence, but they never really truly connect to your heart. And after a while, you even start to forget what's in there in the first place because you've gotten so good at ignoring it yourself. And here's the thing. Stoicism was never meant to be a permanent mask. It was meant to be a momentary stance, a way to navigate crisis with focus. You see, the real strength isn't in keeping the mask on forever. The real strength is in knowing when to set it down. And setting it down doesn't make you any less of a man. It makes you more of a person. So in this conversation, in this episode that I'm recording here, I want to explore where that fine line is between strength and shutdown. And how do you know when you're using composure as a healthy tool and maybe when you've slipped into emotional avoidance? Like, how do you keep your steadiness without losing your truth? And how can you also invite others into your reality without feeling like you're unraveling? Because the goal here is not to throw away stoicism. The goal is to reclaim it, to use it as it was meant to be used, for moments of genuine need, but not as a 24/7 filter on your whole life. And I'll be honest with you, this is not an easy shift. When you've spent years and maybe even decades perfecting this calm exterior, learning to let people see behind that feels unnatural and even risky. But if you're tired of being respected and yet unknown, admired but unseen, then this is a shift that's worth making. So let's dig a little deeper now into what happens internally when Stoicism takes over, shall we? And also why it feels safer than it actually is. Because when Stoicism becomes your default, you most likely won't notice the toll that it's taking at first. In fact, it'll often feel like it's helping you. It gets you through arguments without losing your temper. It helps you to handle setbacks without panicking. And people will see you as dependable and level-headed and reliable. And on the surface, everything looks really good, doesn't it? But internally, though, there's this slow erosion that's happening. You're carrying more than you're letting on. And because you've trained yourself not to share it, the weight never gets lighter. It just redistributes inside of you, settling into the places that you can't quite reach anymore. Here's, I think, what I've noticed in my own life and in the conversation I've had with other men. When we refuse to express what we feel, we don't just keep others out, we also start keeping ourselves out. We become, in essence, strangers to our own emotional landscape. And what we can't name, we really can't address, can we? For example, maybe you're dealing with disappointment at work, and you tell yourself it's not really worth making a fuss over, right? And so you push it down, and you focus on your responsibilities, and you keep showing up like everything's fine. But the feeling doesn't go away, does it? It lingers in the background, and it morphs into irritability, or maybe like a subtle sense of bitterness that you can't quite put your finger on. Or maybe someone close to you hurt you, not in a way that's easy to ignore, but in a way that has a deep sting. And still you stay silent and you tell yourself it's not worth the drama, right? Maybe you're right in the short term. But over the long time, unspoken wounds will turn into distance. And you're still in that same room, but the connection feels thinner and colder. This is the hidden cost of living stoically. You get to avoid conflict in the moment, but then you also invite a different kind of conflict over time. It's the kind that shows up as emotional disconnection or internal stress and relationships that feel really hollow. And I think part of the reason for this, like why this feels so unnatural for men, is that we often mistake emotional awareness for emotional indulgence. We're taught that the moment you start talking about your feelings, you're wasting time or you're making yourself more of a burden. And so we've been taught to clamp down and to tell ourselves that not speaking is the responsible choice. But the truth is, responsibility is not silence. Responsibility is facing the full reality of the situation, including the emotional reality as well. And it's being honest about the impact that something has had on you. So you can actually address it before it festers into resentment or even burnout. And true, this will require vulnerability, a word that makes a lot of men uncomfortable, right? But vulnerability is not about spilling everything. It's not about narrating every fleeting emotion. It's more so about telling the truth when the truth matters. It's about letting people see the human behind the role that you're playing. And when you never allow that, like the roles that you've been taking on become your whole identity. And this is when you start to, in essence, lose yourself. I remember talking to this guy in his late 50s, I think he was, who told me that he'd spent his entire adult life being the rock for his family. And whenever something went wrong, whether it was financial trouble or health scares or even family drama, he was the steady one. He never cried in front of his kids. He never raised his voice in anger. He never let on that anything was wrong. He saw this as an act of love. But when his kids were grown, they admitted something to him that really stunned him. In essence, they said they had no idea who he really was. They loved him, yes, but they didn't feel close to him because he was so busy protecting them from his feelings. He was also protecting them from his self. And that's the paradox. The more that you hide your emotional reality to protect others, the more you unintentionally also deprive them of intimacy with you. See, I'm not suggesting that every frustration necessarily needs to be voiced, or that every hurt should be processed out loud. There's wisdom for sure in discretion, but there's also wisdom in knowing the difference between discretion and detachment. Discretion is choosing the right moments or the right words, the right person who you're going to share with. Whereas detachment is more about convincing yourself that there's never a moment or never a person or never even a point of bothering sharing it at all. One protects the relationships, whereas the latter quietly kills them. And the men who navigate this well have learned that strength and expression aren't opposites. They're actually partners. See, strength without expression becomes isolation. And expression without strength becomes instability. But when they work together, you get the kind of man who can walk into a crisis with a sense of calm and walk into a relationship also with openness. That's the balance I think that we're aiming for here. And this balance really starts with unlearning the idea that shutting down is noble. It's not. It's self-protection at the expense of connection. I want to talk also a little bit about how we can start practicing this balance with small intentional ways to let people who matter to you see past your composure without feeling like you're losing your footing. See, if you've spent years, or for some of you decades, living behind this wall of composure, the very thought of letting people see past it can feel like you're walking on thin ice. Even if you want to be open, your first instinct will be to calculate the risk. You'll be asking, will they think less of me? Will they use this against me later on? Or will I even regret saying anything at all? And honestly, these are really valid questions. Not everyone earns the right to see you unguarded. But the danger of keeping everyone at a distance is that you will end up alone, even in a room full of people who genuinely love you. So how do you start showing more without feeling like you're handing your heart to someone who might drop it? Like I said earlier, I think the wise way is to start small. If you've been taught that any crack in the armor is weakness, then start maybe with something that doesn't feel like a fracture. More like loosening a strap is a good spot. It might mean telling a friend that what this actually rattled me a bit, right? When something stressful happens. Instead of just saying, it's fine, no big deal. It means admitting to your partner, I could actually use your perspective on this, instead of pretending that you have all of it figured out. These are small disclosures that will help you do something powerful. And that is, they'll start to retrain your mind to see openness, not as a loss of control, but more so as an act of trust. And that's, I think, exactly what trust needs to grow. These repeated moments where you choose to show up a little bit more of yourself, and the other person shows you that they can actually handle that with care. And the other piece I think here is knowing what kind of vulnerability you're actually offering. See, there's a difference between dumping and sharing. Dumping is when you unload everything in like one big torrential flood, raw and unfiltered and without considering the impact. Whereas sharing is when you offer just a slice of your reality that's relevant to that moment, that invites connection instead of overwhelming it. So think of it like this. Dumping hands someone this tangled ball of wires and expect them to sort it all out. Sharing hands, like when you're able to share a little bit, you're just giving them one wire to focus on. Dumping often keeps us from sharing at all. In essence, we tell ourselves, I don't want to be a burden to anyone. But the truth is, we're really afraid of how it's going to feel to let someone see us when we're messy, right? And because we've made our worth about how well we hold it all together, showing any mess will likely feel like a failure. But here's where the shift happens. Holding it together is never about falling apart. It's about knowing who you can lean on when you do need to lean on someone. It's about building relationships where your strength isn't just in your composure, but it's also in your willingness to show up and be real. I remember this one conversation that I had with a younger guy, and he'd been through a brutal breakup. And he kept telling me that he was fine, even though it was quite obvious he wasn't. And finally, I asked him, who knows how bad this really is for you? And I remember he just looked at me like I just asked him to read his diary out loud. And eventually said, no one. Why would I tell anyone, he said. They all have their own problems. And that's when I told him something I wish I'd had someone tell me when I was his age. You're not doing anyone any favors by pretending that you don't need them. You're in essence robbing them of a chance to love you in these hard moments, in these hard places that you're in. It's not about making your pain their problem. It's more so about letting your reality be seen so that you can walk through it together. And yes, there is risk in this. Not everyone will handle your openness well. Some people will change the subject. Others will most likely give you bad advice. A few might even weaponize what you share. And this is why discernment matters, because without it, you'll crash. If you're waiting for a risk-free environment, you'll be waiting forever, though. The way forward is to really test trust through these small doses. Share something a little closer to the bone than usual, and then see how well it's received. If the person listens without judgment, if they respect your experience without rushing to try and fix it, that's a sign that they might be safe to go a little deeper with next time. Here's another practical step to consider. Name the feeling privately before you share it publicly. Sometimes the reason vulnerability feels dangerous is because we don't even know what we're trying to express. We just feel a sense of rawness. But if you can identify it, saying like, I'm feeling overlooked, or I'm feeling anxious about money, or I'm feeling uncertain about the future, whatever it is, you can share it far more clearly and avoid oversharing or overshooting into exposure that you might regret later. And when you start practicing this, you'll notice something that's subtle but also life-changing, and that is your relationships will start to feel warmer, richer, more alive. People will start trusting you more because you're showing them that you trust them. And you'll start trusting yourself more because you'll see that your worth does not crumble when you're seen in your fullness. But let's also maybe just spend a moment and explore this balance between strength and openness and how this can actually make you more grounded and respected and trustworthy. See, one of the most powerful things I think that I've learned, and it's actually one of the hardest things to accept, is that true respect does not come from appearing unshakable. It comes instead from being trustworthy in the middle of your humanity. See, people respect a man who's willing to admit that they don't have all the answers, but are willing to work through it. They will follow the man who doesn't just preach courage, but actually models it in real time, even when they seem on shaky ground. And for young men especially, this runs counter to almost everything that we've been taught, right? We grew up in these cultures, whether it's in our families or our schools or sports or even the workplace, where performance and punish are perceived as when we're taught to perform and to look polished and like we have it all together. But the paradox of all this is that when we hide the parts of ourselves that are uncertain or hurt or afraid, we end up hiding the very qualities that make people feel close to us. I've sat across from men who've had every external marker of success, whether it was money or status or physical strength. And yet they couldn't name a single person that they felt they could be fully honest with. They were admired, they were sure, but they weren't known. And deep down, they were starving for that. That's the hidden cost of Stoicism when it becomes a wall instead of a channel. You get respect without relationships. You get admiration without intimacy. You get applause from a distance, but no one in the front row of your real life. So how do we shift that towards that connection without swinging all the way to the other end of the pendulum? We could start by redefining what strength is. Not as never bending without breaking, but never needing to bend to the point of breaking, really. It's perhaps in the way you tell a friend, I'm struggling right now, but I'm here and I want to be present, instead of ghosting them and avoiding that moment. It's like saying, what you said there, I felt in a way that didn't feel good. Can we talk about that? It's like saying, I'm here in this moment, even though it feels awkward. Can we work through this together? And there's something really vital about being open. It isn't just for the benefit of others, it's actually also for yourself. When you let yourself be seen by others, you're also giving yourself evidence that you're still worthy and valued, even when you're not flawless. You're dismantling the lie that says you have to have everything together, you have to be perfect to be loved. This doesn't mean that every space or every person is going to be safe though, right? Part of being a man of integrity and intimacy is really knowing the difference between recklessness and courage. Recklessness is where you throw your heart into the hands of anyone who is nearby, hoping for the best. But courage is placing it carefully into those who have actually proven that they can care for your heart well. And that's why having an inner circle matters so much. If you have even one or two people who are consistently holding space for you, you have something truly beautiful and rare. Most men will go their entire lives without this connection. Not because it's impossible, but more so because they've never taken the risk to develop this. And if you don't have it yet, it's not a sign that you're broken, but it's a call to start small and build with intention and invite others into your life layer by layer. And choosing the right moments to be able to share those moments where you're struggling and where you're in the midst of your humanity. Not all at once, but just slice by slice, brick by brick, if you will. And the reward will be relationships that feel like you can breathe again. Conversations that actually help you feel more clarity. And where you don't feel like you're undermined because others were rushing in to try and solve or fix you. Let me say it plainly, Stoicism is not your enemy. It's a part of you that can help you keep things moving when things get hard. But if you never let that part of you soften, then it can become a prison. And the real strength is learning when to open the door again. And here's where this matters, just even beyond your personal space. See, every young man who sees you modeling this kind of strength learns that it's possible. Every boy who's growing up in a world that says man up without really explaining what that actually means will get this living example of a man who can face life with courage and with tenderness. And when you live like this, you don't just change your own relationships, but you're also changing the script of what manhood could actually look like. And that's how Stoicism stops being a wall that really blocks emotional truth, and how it can actually become this bridge that carries it forward. My dear listener, I hope this has helped you in your consideration of your experience with Stoicism. I'd love to hear your anecdotes, your stories, and your ideas in the comments below. Until then, I'll see you in the next episode.